Hello, Henry Groh here with a review of some 2.1 amps, all about the same power rating. And 2.1 means that it has a powered subwoofer channel to power a subwoofer that's not active, that's passive. So that subwoofer there with that granite on it is a passive subwoofer, so it doesn't have any power to it other than the power that you deliver from the amplifier. So I have a couple of satellites there that are connected to the subwoofer. And I also need these types of things to run my panels. So I have panel speakers there in that green color, and those are my satellites, and they need a subwoofer because they don't produce low frequencies very well. And there's the Lepai LP-168HA, and then this little Chinese number here, the BRZHiFi. It's like a BRZHiFi. And that's this right here. It's a nice little amp, very nice and heavy casing for it. And the Lepai has a very nice case too. Nice a power button out front. And one of the reasons that I bought this Lepai was that it has an adjustable crossover frequency. And it's a high, goes up to a high frequency of 200. So I wanted something in that range that has a variable crossover frequency for the subwoofer channel, this button right here. Okay? And then the last one that I'll mention is this little Chinese unit here, ZK MT21, 2.1 amp. And this thing is feather light. It's basically a board with a like a metal panel on top and bottom. It's very nice, but it is a little awkward to get at the knobs since the knobs are so close together. But if you can get over that, it's a nice little amp that I'll talk about in more detail later. Now, in case you don't want to stick around for all the discussion, I'll tell you, whatever you do, don't buy the Lepai LP-16H. I actually returned this amp and talked about how bad it was and why, and they said, okay, we'll give you your money back, but just keep the darn thing and don't send it back. So okay, fine. So I still got it. And the manufacturer, Parts Express, stood behind it completely. They're great, but I'm a little surprised that they have this amp, and they've got their brand on the literature, because Parts Express usually only provides really good stuff. It's a really good company, and they back their stuff. So I'm hoping that if nobody buys this amp, they'll fix it, okay? And I've seen a review for this amp suffering from the same things 10 years ago. So, oh my gosh, please don't buy this amp. Force Parts Express to fix it. All right, second one. This was a pretty good amp too. Pretty powerful, but it's got some shortcomings. And I guess I wouldn't recommend that either. Now, this one, it was a big winner. Okay, it's the cheapest one. It's only $13. I bought this for $13 without a power supply from banggoods.com. And it has performed admirably, just fine. And it has a variable subwoofer frequency, subwoofer volume, treble, and bass. Okay, so that's the punchline. This I can recommend. It's great. This has some things I don't like, and this is a piece of junk that you shouldn't buy under any circumstances. Okay, now if you want to stay for the details, here they are. First of all, if I remember correctly, and I'm pretty sure I do, this volume knob here is not a main volume knob. This is the volume knob for the satellites. Then they have another volume knob for the subwoofer. Normally, you listen to the music, you set the sub volume and the crossover frequency where you want it, and then you turn up the main, which turns up the satellites and the subwoofer together, up and down, but that's not how this works. Okay, you turn up the volume on the satellites and oh, now you got to turn up the volume on the subwoofer again and find that and search around for where it should be to mix the music nicely. Okay, that is a deal breaker in itself. Okay, that is really inappropriate. Okay, this should be the main volume that controls the satellites and the subwoofer, but it doesn't do that. Okay, second, the subwoofer channel is dysfunctional. This volume knob is super sensitive. It's really dysfunctional in that if you turn it a little bit, it gets like twice as loud instead of a gradual, nice increasing in volume. Tiny little turns on this thing make a large difference in the amount of power that's being sent out. And the deal breaker, the thing that's really bad, is that the subwoofer channel distorts. At very low volumes, we're talking maybe 20%, the sub channel starts to send out bad sound, bad distorted bass to the subwoofer. How do I know that? Because I ran some music in this thing, I ran some music in this thing under the same conditions and volume levels, same conditions in these things. No distortion, and oh my God, it sounds terrible distortion. Okay, so this thing needs to be fixed at the manufacturing level, at the design level. Many design flaws, and it's beautiful. It's really nice. It's got the knobs, you can actually get to them. I love the design, and the switching, everything feels pretty good, but it doesn't work. So it's like a piece of trash to me now. Okay? Now, the downsides about this thing is that it doesn't have variable subwoofer crossover. And the subwoofer crossover frequency is fairly high, which is okay, but some people might not want it that high. Now, if we look at the literature, we'll see that it is in Chinese. Okay, that's nice. But we can glean some things out of it. Now, here we go. Here's the frequency ranges for the satellites and the subwoofer channel, the 2.1. Okay, now this is very common in 2.1 amps, which is also very annoying. The crossover frequency is for the sub-channel only. The mains are not crossed over. The mains have full frequency going to them. You're sending the low frequencies to the satellites, which in general is bad. If you happen to have some satellites that can produce low frequencies down to say 80 hertz, which is not uncommon, it's very common, then you're going to have overlap in those frequencies with the subwoofer channel if you don't turn up or down that subwoofer crossover frequency. Oh, but this one doesn't have a crossover frequency that's adjustable. So, see, this is crossed over, or whatever you want to call it, up to 200 hertz. So that means you got 18 hertz all the way up to 200 hertz that are being overlapped by the satellites and subwoofer. That's not kosher. Okay, that is inappropriate. They should have crossed over us internally so that, say, this is maybe 150 hertz and then only 150 hertz to 22,000 hertz is delivered to the satellites. They should have done some kind of internal crossover. Now also, if you notice here, most stereos say 20 to 20. 20, this one says 20 to 22. You know, this is 18 to 22. I mean, that's crazy. 18 hertz, and this one 10 hertz. The problem is most speakers aren't designed to produce 10 hertz. So if you happen to have some music like the heartbeat in Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon that really stresses the limits of a speaker, it's going to be sending some 10 hertz to your speaker, and it is going to bottom out. Okay, it cannot handle that. So I had to actually add an inductor or a capacitor to cut off the frequency response at around 30 hertz, because my speaker can't produce 30 hertz, so no reason to send 30 hertz to it. And it's getting some really low stuff that is causing distortion and bottoming out, clipping of my subwoofer. Anyway, okay, so that's some of the kind of the downsides. This is a nice little amp. I think it came with a nice antenna. It's really cool in that it has FM radio. This one is just a Bluetooth with an aux input. Okay, but this has a radio. That's one of the things that I like. I like listening to the radio. It was a nice 2.1 amp, but it's got some downsides to it that make me, I wouldn't buy it again. Now, this thing has performed great, and I can't really find anything wrong with it. Now, it does have some quirky things. Usually, when you plug in an aux cord, boom, the Bluetooth will turn off. But in this case, the Bluetooth takes precedent. If the Bluetooth is connected and you plug in an aux cord, it won't turn off. It'll stay connected to Bluetooth. So if my son has his phone up in his room and it's connected to this amp, because we were down here working out yesterday, and I want to connect to it, well, I basically can't, because it's still connected to my son's phone. And even if I plug in the aux cord, it's still connected to my son's phone, or the other phone that I have, or my wife's phone. So I have to search around for the phone that it's connected to and turn the Bluetooth physically off on the phone. Or even if it's on my phone that's right here in front of me, I can't connect my iPod because I have to turn off the darn Bluetooth in it. So that's a little quirky. Most people, however, will use Bluetooth all the time. And that's kind of what their idea is. People are going to be using Bluetooth. Nobody's going to be using aux cords. So let's just make the Bluetooth more seamless and take precedent. Everything else works fine on it. The frequency response, the variable frequency on it, on the subwoofer channel, it works nicely. And I've confirmed through tests that it does do a good job cutting out the frequencies that I want. Now here is, I just made a little scan. I typed this up or cut and pasted from the literature, because this thing comes in a little box with no literature at all in it. You have to go to the product literature when you buy it if you want to get this literature for this thing. And it also comes kind of unassembled, but assembly is idiot proof if you've ever done a Lego project. All it is screwing this top panel to the bottom panel using these little standoffs. The thing about it is quite light. Where am I going to put it? It kind of moves around. If these things, I could put this somewhere and I could secure it with some screws. And even this thing, it's like twice as heavy, and it's got some little rubber bouncers, pads on it, which steady it. This is quite lightweight, which might be good for you, or it might not. It might not. It'd be great for like a mobile system too. So that's my discussion and review of these three 2.1 amps. Oh, and one more thing. This thing takes, you might see here, 12 to 24 volts. In general, if the manufacturer gives you a voltage range, you want to err on the high side. Let's see, this one, I can't even read that because my eyes are too bad. But anyway, that one comes, I think, with a 24 volt thing. So here is a voltage thing. See, it says the output is 24 volts, 4 amps. For all these amps, that's about the right range that you want. something in the range of 100 watts, because at least they claim to be around 50 by 50 by 100 watts. Now, that is quite a stretch and not true, basically. So, for example, this one says 50 watts for the right and left channel, 100 watts to the subwoofer, and that's peak power, probably at 4 ohms. Where this is the same thing over here on this one. Max power, that's very important. 50 by on each channel, left and right, and then 100 watts. What that means is it's really 25 watts per channel RMS, root mean square, and 50 watts to the subwoofer. And that's probably with 4 ohms in mind. If you're running 8 ohm speakers, you're going to get less than that. And that's fine. 120, 15, 10, 20 watts is actually a lot, RMS. I can blow the doors off of my basement or my garage with 25 watts RMS per channel. And that's what all these amps provide. And I like to err on the side of higher impedance on my speakers. So I prefer 8 ohm speakers because 4 ohm speakers can cause too much draw of power from your amp and cause clipping. I've had more trouble overheating amps and clipping of amplifiers when I use 4 ohm speakers. So that's it. I covered the power supply. Try to go for a higher voltage, the higher the range, and don't skimp on the amps either. You want that power supply to provide enough power for what you're doing. Okay, I hope that was helpful. $13. It's ridiculous. This thing was like 60 or 70, and this was a great deal without a power supply. It was around close to 30. But still, it's junk. It's worthless. This is very nice. It's got some downsides. And oh my God, $13, you got great sound. So there you have it.